Hi, I'm Professor Keeley, and welcome to Being Paleo. Thank you for joining me today. And thank you for hopefully subscribing to my channel. Make sure that you click down below to subscribe and to ring the bell so that you can get my latest videos as I post them. My goal behind Being Paleo is to explore the philosophy side of my career, and then also look at being paleo as the lifestyle of the paleo peoples, ancient archaic humans that were living smarter than we are now. And science is now starting to reveal some amazing things about how they were really living, and they were living in harmony with nature because there is no evidence. Because, for example, they would use grapevines and natural plant-based materials to make baskets and clothing, and yet we can't find evidence of that because it's deteriorated. If we get lucky, we can get a glimpse of it, but the fact that there is no real trace evidence begins to tell you how these people were living very sophisticated. And again, if we look at only the archaeological evidence that we have today, then we're in the same path as how we even mischaracterize cavemen and Neanderthals, because the Neanderthal image of a caveman, hairy ape-like caveman, came from the original bones that they discovered and then did modeling on 3D modeling on it, and came up with this idea of a caveman being hairy and ape-like. And yet we now know that first set of bones that they discovered was from a probably 70-year-old man who had arthritis and was bent over. So we have mischaracterized even Neanderthals, and they are near and dear to my heart, and I will end up talking about them later. But today I wanted to go through the ancient motivational sayings, because that's what I'm doing right now, is interested in motivationals that I will unpack later in some of the courses I'm going to teach. So you get the benefit of me being a college professor, going through this and kind of bringing a different lens to things, and which is what I'm trying to do with these ancient sayings. So the one I'm doing today is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I have my little notes here. So when I think about don't put all your eggs in one basket, it's an ancient, it's been, and again, when I say ancient, you may think, well, my grandmother said it, so it can't be that ancient. Or my mother said it, and it can't be that ancient. Well, it was passed down to them, and passed down to them, and passed down to them, generations. So it is ancient. And we need to start to realize that some of these ancient sayings are an oral tradition. It's the same thing that happened in other cultures, and yet we discount it because it's not written down. We have evidence that oral tradition it's handed down, and it's very accurate. So again, hopefully science and archaeologists start to believe some of these stories that got passed down, like Atlantis in Plato, and people discount it because they physically can't find it. Well, there's something there. I mean, it's a story that was passed down to him by his father, who met an Egyptian priest, and Egyptian priests are just like our clergy today, who whip out the book, and it's open to interpretation to some degree, but you have to understand back then there really was no interpretation. They literally passed things down just as we see with Native American people. So that's what this channel is about, is exploring ancientness and learning that ancient wisdom that we have forgotten. So when you look at don't put all your eggs in one basket, the first thing I thought of is obviously financially. We hear that a lot: diversify your portfolio, because if something happens and you've got all your money, in a certain area, that it could be wiped out very quickly. That becomes more important now, especially if you've got your money in a 401k plan, because if you think about this, what happened when employers, and this is my business side kind of coming in a little bit, when employers actually moved away from offering pensions, and I live in the Detroit metro area, and Detroit went bankrupt because of having too many pension plans that were out there as people retire. Back then when they offered it, it didn't, they could never, and imagine thinking forward 100 years, what that was going to do to be a drag on their company, to have to continue to pay pensions. And yet that's what it took to get people to work for them, and say, hey, listen, I'll protect you. Isn't that what good leadership is? I'll protect you. And then even after you retire, I'll pay you so you can just sit around and retire on top of your Social Security. So we don't have that today. Companies have moved away from pensions, and instead they give you that money by matching your 401k. So however much money you put in your 401k, they match it. So that's where the idea of don't put all your eggs in one basket is because, governments have protected that money and give it to you as, pre-tax savings. But you got to be very careful because that's one basket. So if you put all your eggs in the 401k basket, we've seen now, especially as this recession is looming and we've been through recessions, you have people who've retired have to go back to work because what happens to their 401k in a recession? Crashes. They put all their eggs in one basket. So you should make sure that you have a diverse portfolio. So yes, you do have stuff in 401k, but you should be finding different savings. I'll just tell you right now, I have been collecting scrap metal, gold and silver. Necklaces break, rings break, and people don't want to fix it for some reason, or it gets passed down to some child who doesn't even realize, who thinks it's costume jewelry when it's actually 14 karat gold. So I'm out looking for scrap metal, and there's places where you can buy, true scrap, because in the economy, and I don't want to end up too much of a business conversation, but in economies, when the economy goes down, and that right now we know people don't want to listen to this, and that's fine. I'll just speak my truth as a business person and college professor that teaches business, is that when the dollar goes down and the value of a dollar goes down because of supply and demand, too much dollars on the market, right? What happens then is gold and silver goes up. It's always had a direct opposite relationship with the dollar. So I'm putting my eggs in different baskets by, having the 401k as everybody else does, but then also going out and buying scrap metal. That way, if something happens to my 401k, I have scrap metal that I could take a necklace into a pawn shop. I can melt it down. I can do whatever I want to do with it. And it gives me some flexibility. I also have an Etsy store that I had a while ago, and I'm now going to be starting back up again with all these vintage purses that my dad has collected for me. The point where I'm a bit overwhelmed by my dad. He's taking away some of my joy of vintage purses. But I look for like the 1920, or actually going back, look, Art Nouveau from France, those types of purses, Art Deco here, metal beads, all the way to like the 1950s and 1960s. I just love vintage purses. So I'm going to go back and start to sell the ones that my dad has bought for me, and keep the ones I want to keep and create like an art form out of them. But that's me putting things on Etsy and creating a second income on Etsy. It doesn't happen fast. Sales don't come really fast until you figure out what it is that you're selling. I mean, obviously you have to figure out what your niche is and what you have access to finding, and is there a demand out there, for that market. So again, that's my third option. Is I've got my day job. I have my 401k. I'm collecting scrap. I'm creating a second store again. All because the economy is getting ready to trash. And again, don't listen to the government telling you that it's not going to tank. Listen to business people. We're really smart about knowing what's going to happen. That's when the Ford CEO knew that the 2008 market crash was going to happen, and as a really good sound leader, went out and started refinancing all the plants, stuck that money in the bank, and they were the only of the big three that did not have to take government loans. So putting all your eggs in one basket, there's an example of he saw something coming, and his answer was to refinance, and he realized it was going to be a credit crunch. He refinanced and they had money in the bank. That's not putting all your eggs in one basket. Also, thinking about it when it comes to entrepreneurship. Again, I can't get away from talking about business on some levels, but entrepreneurship. A lot of people think, I'm going to leave my company, I'm going to start my own company. Or they leave school and want to start their own business. You're not going to make money at it right away. When you're monetizing your YouTube channel, it doesn't happen right away. So you have to start to think about, how do I keep my day job and then basically buy yourself out of your own contract? And when I've had to explain that to people, which means that your contract is your employment agreement. So if you're working for somebody, you basically said, I agree that my time is worth $15 an hour. And now we're getting that point where people are like, no, my time is worth more money. Well, it's not, depending on your skill level, and you have to appreciate and start to learn that skill. Watch the video on Accept Your Lot in Life. If you don't want to do the things that will help create value in you, which is going to school, getting your master's degrees, going to a vocational school, becoming an expert, or the perseverance of becoming an artist, knowing that it's going to be more famine, then feast, whatever that's going to be, you have to have that skill set. So, not putting all your eggs in one basket when you want to go into business is to continue to have side businesses that pay the bills while you're building up your business. That would be an example of not putting all your eggs in one basket. Looking at if you have clients, for example, not putting all your eggs in one basket by having all clients in one market. We saw that also in the automotive industry when people, the tier suppliers went out of business because they were too heavily dependent on the automotive industry that had just taken a tank. So, making sure you spread out into other industries is a way to make sure that your portfolio, your client portfolio, is equally as flush. And again, think about that term in the fitness, in the fitness industry. As I told you in one of my videos, that in being paleo, I've tried making my own food, but I'm just so busy that I don't know how to be able to manage a being paleo plan. And so I went out to, and this is not a paid endorsement, I'll just tell you, I'm using V-Shred right now. They're an online, fitness program that what they do is they give you a meal plan that you follow and then also a workout plan. So with the meal plan, it's been very easy because I just said, check the box, want to be on paleo, but really more like primal. And so I'll do another video explaining, the differences between the two. But that's not putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's why you've seen people who are vegans struggle with energy, because protein comes from meat and dairy and different places like that, and eggs, and they won't eat that. So how are you able to get nutrients from a plant-based, diet, which they've made huge strides in doing that. But that goes to putting all your eggs in one basket, no pun intended, with poor vegetarians not eating it or vegans not eating it, but that puts a lot of strain on your body to say, I'm going to only be vegan. It puts a lot of strain by saying that's my one basket I'm going to eat from. Whereas that's why you've seen the emergence of vegetarian, which says, okay, well, I'm not going to go completely vegan because I can't. I still want to eat eggs or milk products or dairy or whatever. So you see people will say, I'll be vegetarian, which is not as severe and restrictive as vegan. Well, paleo is to vegan. Well, maybe I'll just talk about it. Paleo is to vegan. And so living that lifestyle, it's very hard of being that restrictive of what you can't buy. So with vegan or with paleo, you can do primal, and that's what I'm on, really, where I can eat some things that are not on the paleo plan, but for the most part, I stick to it. So that's another example of putting all your eggs in one basket when you're sticking to one diet plan, and not, number one, exploring the different diet plans that are out there that would work for your body, and then also, again, managing them properly. And then the final way I'd say, thinking about don't put all your eggs in one basket, is looking at relationships. I know that sounds really crazy. I'm not talking about dating multiple people or being in relationships with multiple people, but what I have found is that relationships need space, and a lot of people who are very codependent don't give it space. So putting all your eggs in one basket is that when you are dating someone, find and make sure you keep time for your friends. And if you have multiple friends that like to do different things, then make sure that you are doing those. And you're willing to say to your partner, listen, my friends are incredibly important and you are too. And so if they ask me to go do something and then you ask me to do something, then I'm going to go do it with them because they asked first. So it's making sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because I've seen people get so wrapped up, and just my friends or girls friends, I get them so wrapped up with one man that man becomes their world, and when he leaves, they're completely devastated by it because they didn't maintain their relationships with their girlfriends. They didn't keep up with activities that they enjoyed, like painting or writing poetry or whatever. Everything went away from that person. So for me, not putting all your eggs in one basket means the same thing, is to keep yourself broadened out so that you're neutral and you're even and you've got well balanced in your life. You're not heavily dependent on one area, that without that component, your life goes to hell in a handbasket. So again, that's what, to me, when I was thinking through for this video, what does don't put all your eggs in one basket mean? It wasn't just financial. And it's also that workload. finding people who, again, don't rely on just one person who's going to do everything in your tribe, broaden, because you'll burn that person out. But thinking about, how do you get involved so that you can make sure that that person has a longevity and doesn't get tired because they're doing everything. So again, there's a lot of different applications for how, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Clearly, the first one is to think about more on business, but hopefully I gave you some other ideas on ways to start to think about what this ancient saying says and how do you apply that to your life. So it's one thing to know these ancient sayings. It's another thing to actually apply them to your life. So if you're stuck in one of those relationships where you're all consuming, then grab a friend like a life raft and say, listen, I need you to take me out 3 or 4 times a week or once a week. And I will promise to keep that time sacred if you ask me out, and try to get yourself out of relationships with that. I'm currently unpacking from one myself where I realized how neglected I have, treated some of my friends because I've been so consumed by a certain thing. And again, it's not healthy for anybody. And also it creates a little mystery with your partner if they always are wondering what you're doing out with your friends. So it's a natural part of a relationship that keeps it going. But if you're not applying that and you're not broadening out your friends and your eggs in one basket and you have multiple friends, then you risk being alone when that fails. Instead of if the relationship with your partner fails, you have friends that rally around you to try to keep you up. Well, if they go away because you've ignored them and you haven't treated them properly, then of course they're not going to be there for you. So again, to me, that's what keeping all your eggs in one basket means. So I would ask you to keep thinking about this idea and what it can mean for you, because there's a lot of different ways to apply it. But I really appreciate you joining me today. Make sure again that you subscribe and like the channel. Again, as you watch these videos, the focus is on learning, but hopefully you watch to the end, because I am giving away, giveaways with my logo, some of my merchandise, and also now I'm adding in some of my consulting. So if you have an idea on the business side, because I'm an award-winning marketer, you can visit my Hunter Hennessy channel, and I will give away business advice. I mean, here, if you need advice that you're stuck in your relationship or you're stuck in this rut that you're in that you can't get out, that you want to move backwards, where you're eating healthier and living healthier, then just, again, watch, apply. And I'm picking people that I'll do consultations with where I can give some advice that hopefully might help, kind of lend that direction of being paleo. So again, thank you very much for watching today, and enjoy your day being paleo.